3rd. This is the Budget Committee meeting, so I will rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Public input? No? Nah, okay. So review and additions to the agenda. Earlier today or yesterday, at some point within the last 24 hours, I sent out some information regarding the school board's capital planning committee. So we'll discuss that later. So it'll be added to the new business, but it's a review in addition to the agenda. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to add to the agenda? All right. So then we have review and acceptance of minutes. I have one outstanding set of minutes, April 18th. I believe are current. Anybody have any comments or revisions they wanted to make to those?
Nope, look good. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of April 18th.
Second. Seconded, made and seconded. So all those in favor of approving the minutes of April 18th, please indicate by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Those opposed? Abstentions.
Abstain.
So we have 2 abstentions.
I have 2.
Yep. All right, correspondence. We had the town reports, school business reports, one late, one very prompt. And then the IT expense information for the fire station. I think that's pretty much most of the things that have gone through. And then we can move into the reports on the town business.
Just a couple of things. The town is at 64% of the town budget expended, which is right on target, according to Troy Brown. Everything seems to be running smoothly there. The town audit is just about completed. It will be ready for viewing in September when it's all finished and printed up. They also had a wage and hour audit, and there were no findings on that, which is very unusual, but it's very good. The highway paving projects are done, completed. And last but not least, tax bills will be going out this week.
Oh, yay. So everybody likes you today. Next week's another story.
I don't do it.
All right. And then we wanted to talk about the IT question.
Sorry, just a question. The first point that you mentioned, 60%, was it 60? I want to make sure I get it
64
right. 64% remains, or is
has been expended at this point,
okay, got it.
which he says is right on track.
Yeah, because you were in January to January, right?
Something.
January to December.
So why wouldn't that be closer to 50%?
Because April, let's say May 17th, you just do the math, I think it comes out to 64.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
All right. So then we had questions regarding the fire station, IT. Did you have a chance to review it? Did it address your questions?
Yeah, look, I mean, it was really more for the committee, not
Right.
necessarily for me, right?
Just if there are any specific questions you were hoping to have.
The questions that I have are more directed to the committee. It's
Right.
not about the money or the dollars spent, right, or authorized to be spent. I want to make sure that the committee is well aware of the investments that the town has made, right, in terms of infrastructure that are now going to be part of the IT rotation plan, replacement plan every, 5 to 7 years, I believe the
I
answer
know,
was.
right? Yep.
Right, and there was also some confusion from my side, right? But I think based upon some of the comments that Selectman Lemire made, in that the warrant article did not contain IT spend, when in fact it did, right? And also the fact that we also saw the large increase in the budget.
Right.
Right? And there was some discrepancy about, there was like an administrative error on the town side in that number and et cetera, which is kind of where the discrepancy lied. But anyway, my answers are resolved, right? I want to make sure the committee is aware of those expenses because in the next couple of years, I can guarantee we're going to see replacements as things start to get dated and as software continues to get updated.
Right. So I noticed that it seems to show 99,500 remaining. Like, is that the underspend on the Ekman's budget or like what?
There are a lot of things going on. Most of it has to do with the new fire station, but
Right.
I could get the info for you.
All right. So he sent the cost tracking. I don't know if that's on Ekman's side, the 99,580, or that was our contingency that wasn't spent, or like, it was a guaranteed maximum price. So it'd be super awesome if we came in way, a
Always
substantial
good.
amount under, which I think a lot of people in town would be very appreciative. So unless it's set aside for other project costs that aren't captured within Ekman's budget, which is possible because this is an Ekman spreadsheet. So, or if that's being applied towards the IT. So if we could get clarification on what that remaining funds actually.
Sorry.
So the remaining funds on the Ekman spreadsheet has a bunch of, there's a list of items over here. Remaining funds at the bottom total is $99,580.80. So just, is that accounted for internally on our Litchfield side? Is that being used towards soft costs, offset soft costs? Again, it was a GMP. So if that's what we came in under at, that'd be.
It very well could be.
Right, so then is it being returned, or are we expending it on other project costs that weren't necessarily? So,
That I couldn't tell you,
right, so
but I can ask Troy to get back to you on that.
I appreciate that, thank you.
Troy, you're watching, right?
And are we seeing any progress on the water, or is it just an ongoing cha-ching on the legal bills?
We had a meeting with the attorney after the selectment meeting the other night, and he is going to steer someone towards the town to start addressing that, because the costs are crazy high, especially for the rental of the fire hydrants, which cost the town $500,000 a year for the fire hydrants, which is ridiculous. Whether you use them or not.
That's for all.
That's for all the fire
across the
hydrants,
town.
yes. Yeah.
You'd have to appropriate the portion specifically to
You have to cover that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, whether you use it or not, whether they sit there and collect dust, you still have to pay, and it is crazy. So they are looking into that.
All right, anything else on the town side that anybody has questions or comments that they'd like to discuss?
One thing I forgot to tell you was that Chief Frazel Fire Department got a $40,000 grant. Applied for and received a $40,000 grant for EOC equipment. It was, hold on, I'll pull it up for you here. He applied for some grant, federal assistance for equipment and furniture for emergency operations centers. And so that's one bill that the taxpayers won't be paying, which is very nice. So they saved us $40,000. That's a good job by the chief.
So is that being used to outfit the new station with new?
For equipment and furniture for the emergency operations center, yes.
Excellent. Thank you, Chief.
All right, anything else? All right, we'll move on to school.
So you received the business administrator's report probably today.
Yep.
So I'm not certain if anyone had an opportunity to look at it, but within that, it's probably something that would interest the budget committee is potential encumbrances that we have in there for a total of $197,593. It's not finalized, has not been voted on by the school board. But I don't know if anyone had an opportunity to take a look at that or had any questions on it.
I briefly looked at it, and end of year encumbrances are a common thing, right? One of the things that was in there was the vehicle, right?
Yes.
Is that typically an encumbered item, or historically is that something that goes to vote?
That's an item that we put in our budget, I think, a few times and then pulled it out. And it's something that's in dire need.
Yeah.
And at this point, it can't wait another year to get another vehicle.
That's that black truck, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most likely won't pass inspection. It's basically rotting out. And it's probably costing more money right now in repairs than to purchase a new one. Actually, I don't believe it's going to be a new one. I believe it's going to be a used vehicle we're looking for.
I think ultimately that comes down though to philosophy associated with encumbrances. Like, what is the purpose of encumbrances and why? Some people would put it as, costs that we need immediately. Others would do projects that they don't think we can necessarily get support for, or that are out there for a while that need to be addressed, that aren't quite as exciting to put in the budget. So it all comes down to who's drafting at the time and the philosophy they stand by. So realistically, these are probably all in line with things that have been done before. Probably not necessarily things I would always agree with, but I don't know that there's not really a lot of things that we could, as a budget committee, say that we can't do other than try to make sure that we don't have $197,000 available at the end of the year to do these types of things. Yep, well, absolutely.
If you recall from the budget committee meetings in the fall, this list was actually presented at that time as things that we had pulled back from the budget and as a way to scale back the budget so that the increase on the appropriation side was not
Right.
as high as it could potentially be. In that philosophy, it's basically projects on the maintenance side that have really been let go for a long time, and we have some dire needs on the sides of facilities. These things will help us to get there, and the hope was that if we do have that remaining fund balance, that we put that money towards that. So the picture of what we're going to have left over at the end of the year will become much clearer as we get closer to June.
I do think originally you had the front entrance on the LMS one, so I was going to have a question, I think last few months.
We did.
And I was
Now-
going to have, that was when I was definitely going to say, I think that should be a warrant article. So I was kind of pleased to see that it came off of this.
Yeah, so
list.
there's a couple ways of thinking on that one where the state infrastructure fund had granted us $100,000. They capped it. We need probably about 220 to complete that project. So there's looking through, we did use money from the capital reserve to accomplish the project at GMS. So that is one option to look at. And there is the option of going to the warrant with the grant money being an offset for it. So the board will go through that, and we'll go through that at the district level and figure out the best way to go after that.
I think you know what my
project.
vote would be, but
What's that?
I'm sure you know how I would like
I-
to see that
I do.
positioned. So, yes. So like I said, I did see it on that. It was going to be one of my comments tonight, but then I saw the one that came through today and saw that it was removed from the list. So-
Yeah, because the things that are on there are really things that back in the fall that we looked at on the facilities and maintenance side that they really are the priority right now to get some of those things done. So
When was the last time the high school track was done? Was it when we redid the whole thing?
the high school track was done 12 years ago and hasn't had the appropriate annual maintenance that it's supposed to.
No, there was
Hold
an encumbrance a few years ago to
Hold on.
redo the track.
Right, so that was 2012, if I recall, so 2012, 2013, in that range when the track was replaced.
Yes.
Yep.
By encumbrance.
And since it's been replaced, there hasn't been that regular maintenance. So
Okay, so-
my years may be off,
Yeah.
but at the same time, by doing that,
Right.
it extends the life of the track.
Right, because it's supposed to be done on a regular basis. isn't
Yes.
it?
I remember that one because that was an encumbrance of 150 grand.
I recall that as well. That was
I think it
one
was
that
much
on
higher
there.
than that, but yes. So,
My only question, I mean, I think a lot of these make sense, et cetera. I know a little bit later, we're going to talk about this capital planning committee that the school board is getting going here, and that's great. I guess some of these I would defer to that capital planning committee, right? I'm not saying one way or another on security systems, et cetera, that's in here, right? Likely there is truly a need for that, right? But isn't that something that should be in scope for the entire capital planning committee?
That's a continuation of ongoing projects that have been going on for 2 years. A lot of those things that come up security wise. So those are continuing on with the Homeland Security Assessment and that plan that came through in 2016.
Yep.
So we're taking what was there and continuing on
right.
with those pieces.
But there are issues that were originally addressed in the report that had to do with heating and ventilation controls district-wide.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like we're picking smaller sections of it. Would we not try to,
I believe the one you're looking at in LMS, that's in the office area.
That's the
correct?
guidance office area that if you've ever been in there, it's about 900 degrees at any given time, any time of year.
It's something separate from
it's
I know
horrible.
the entire systems.
So that's to put a fix in place. We are working within the district to kind of come up with a plan for some of those more HVAC and that type of stuff to bring to the capital planning committee to go through some options that we may have.
I would just be interested to see how it ties into the report because again, we paid for a consultant and we didn't pay a little bit. We paid for a consultant to evaluate all of our buildings. And from that, we had recommendations. And quite frankly, I haven't seen too many of the big things being addressed, which is why when we talk about it, I'm glad to see the capital and planning committee coming forward again. My concern is we're going to go in circles and still do nothing. So I would
no.
just, so my concern is I believe that these kind of things would have been addressed had we addressed the district-wide issues of the heating and venting. So if we're going to end up going back and doing district-wide, would we be leveraging greater economy of scale if we did this, incorporated this into the bigger project.
We can look into that for sure. At this point, all I'll say is that there are options that we are looking at to look at that broader report and handle a lot of those things. But those are things that will come forward through the capital planning committee to the board.
Okay.
That's my piece.
Thanks.
So just in total for end of year fund balance, it looks like 487 is the number, 487,000 thereabouts.
That's estimate at this point. You're still looking at mid-month. You're still looking at items that are encumbered in blanket purchase orders that could be released back in. It could still be emergent situations. You never know. So
Anticipated, I get it.
that's anticipated right now. It'll get clearer in the next few weeks or so.
And then some of that goes into, there was a warrant article that diverted some of that into one of the,
Yeah, those are broken down on the
Maintenance,
balance
yep.
sheet, the warrant
Perfect.
articles, the return for the kindergarten project.
Yep.
Those are all accounted for.
excellent.
And again, I just want to preface that this report is still fluid. The school board has not voted on it. As a matter of fact, one of the items that we discussed last evening, Corey's already looking into as far as a shed. Rather than going by another wood shed to put on the parking lot, want to go get like Sam's Club or something, get a plastic shed, like half the price and probably bigger. So I know he's already looking.
Surely
at that.
somebody's got a plus membership, you get 5% off right off the top. Perfect.
Actually, I think I sent you a picture.
All right. Excellent. So are there any other comments regarding the report this month or last month? Because people probably looked at the one that came through a couple weeks ago and not necessarily the one today. So hearing none. All right, find my end of year project. So we did some of those projections. Enrollment up. What is the kindergarten enrollments
60.
looking?
Right now it's at 60,
Okay.
which is I think a little bit higher than it was last year at this time.
So what that's telling people, if you're watching and you're planning on using the system, the classes, please enroll so that they're not looking for a classroom the first week in September. Because right now, the 4 you have would work unless you have discover massive enrollment in the next 2 months.
And what's the class this year? Is it 80?
84 or something.
87?
It just keeps growing.
And the other classes, are they looking in line with what we expect?
Everything else is in line.
Okay.
So total right now is 1321, just to give you an idea that we started the year with 1303. The outgoing senior class right now is 121 and coming in is 121. So depending what happens as far as kindergarten,
Right.
then the numbers basically remain the same.
I mean, we had 60 was the number enrolled?
Right now, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Another thing I had was, as probably you're aware, we're getting new buses next year. And they're in line as far as for the year or us at the beginning of school. So one added option that we discussed a meeting or two ago and is going ahead is there will be outside cameras that'll be at the tail end, top of the bus. They'll be facing towards the stop sign and the flashing lights. So they'll take a nice picture of a vehicle coming at it if it was to go through a stop sign.
Are those enforceable? Like, can we send them to the police officers and they can get?
That's, as far as we know it is, but we'll be discussing it with the police
I
department.
was saying, you just make up, based on what I've seen in town, you might make back the money and invest it pretty quick.
I actually thought we could get a deal with the police department that we'd get 50% of the revenue, they could have 50% of the revenue. But I'd rather see the revenue be zero, and that's the whole idea.
Absolutely, but
Unfortunately, it's not, and I can attest to it just watching from my corner,
Oh.
that there are several that just go right by. And
Yep.
unfortunately, all the bus driver can do right now is just press their horn.
Yep.
So this will take a picture, and I would think it'd be enforceable, but we'll talk to the police department, because if you go through a toll, it takes your picture and gets your license plate number and a picture of you, and they'll
Right.
send you the ticket.
I think the bus company would be incentivized also for insurance purposes, like those kind of things. So maybe they'll be willing to discuss it.
So aside from cameras inside the buses, there'll also be cameras outside the buses.
One of the questions, if I may, just while buses came up.
Yeah.
You may have seen this in one of the questions I asked, was the bus contract. I mean, again, looking at last year's budget, at that time, you didn't have a bus contract. So that was one of my questions is, do we have a bus contract in place now
We do,
with First Student again
we do,
for 5 years?
correct.
Okay. And what's the annual increase?
It's actually a decrease.
Whoa. I was expecting that one.
We had budgeted initially for a 5%.
That's what I
increase. I think
Yeah.
it's 3.2.
Right. So it's a decrease from what we had budgeted. I knew that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is it, like ballpark 800 grand for the year, something like that?
Somewhere around the top 10.
Yeah, okay.
And there's,
$330.20 per bus per day for 180 days.
Yeah, okay. That's pretty good. And 9 buses is still the right number, you think?
As of right now.
That's to be determined.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We're hoping.
I really don't with new neighborhoods and down.
That's why I'm asking the question with new neighborhoods, and there's another one on the south side near Hudson, that's kind of Hudson Litchfield, right? I see it in that
Yeah.
development, like, you know.
That's kind of to be determined based on routes and enrollment and where the kids are scattered.
And the last thing I had is our negotiating team for the school board has completed their conversations with the LEA. Right now, it's the teacher contract is in their hands. And the negotiating team for the LEA still has not voted on it. They would have to vote on it first, then they would go to the teachers and have the teachers vote on it. But at this point right now, it's in their hands, so we're done, we've negotiated, and the contract's in their hands to do what they want with it.
With the LEA.
Correct.
all right,
The LEA negotiating team, because they have not even presented to their team yet, or the teachers.
And is the vision that's going to a special article, or what's the plan from?
The plan from there, well, first they'd have to vote on it, and if they
Of
approve
course.
it, then, we would have to go in front of a judge and
Permission.
get permission, present the judge for a special election. We then have to give 30-day notice, and then we'd have the election. But we'd like to, if and when they approve one, we'd present it to the budget committee for their approval.
okay. So when I spoke to Dr. Jetty, he had a list of ifs that lined up with if this, would we, so I haven't seen I'm assuming that the questions he had are in line with the proposal that he had suggested, like a reduction over considered compared to the previous article. So it sounds like it's gonna come in lower cost-wise. Shifting from an HMO to a deductible plan, is that the green to the yellow? Is that?
Correct.
So that's the same plan that they were discussing. Insurance savings, is there anticipated that there would be insurance savings to the taxpayers for each of the years?
The first year, not, because we're already into the first year. It's too
Right.
late, so it'd be green.
Right, okay, so, yeah,
But we're hoping if we do get a contract and we do switch to yellow, that there would be a savings in each of the following 2 years.
okay. And the contribution to the insurance could potentially be ramping up on the employee side and ramping down on the town side?
Potentially.
Okay. And then steps and a COLA in each year. So currently, I think the contract had no COLA. Was it no step, but a COLA, or a COLA but no step in the first year?
It depends what individuals, but I believe there was no COLA
Right,
the first year.
which would be this
Or
year's.
additional steps for teachers that had missed steps.
Right. So essentially, this year, they're flat compared to what they had last year because there was no contract. So it's essentially no step, no COLA. So year 2 would be the step and the COLA. Would the agreement be retroactive?
It would be a third year. The contract is still for 3 years.
Right, but it's not, so it's not retroactive, it'd be effective.
The contract would be retroactive.
If it were to be voted in
Yeah.
September and it would have passed, there would be a couple payrolls that would be retroactive.
Okay,
As it would be for next school year.
okay.
I have a question. On the negotiating, it's my understanding that in order to get a judge to order a special election, there's got to be an emergency. Is there an emergency of a danger of a strike within the teachers or anything?
Strike.
So there's,
They could leave
okay,
and look elsewhere.
Yeah.
Which we don't want.
okay,
And we feel strongly there's a need to have a contract in place.
because otherwise they would sit under the current contract.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And how much is this costing the town as far as legal and all that stuff? And there's got to be lawyers involved, right?
Well, it's not costing anything. Right? We have,
It's not, it's in the budget?
well, we have lawyers' fees in the budget.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
what is the school board's position on the teachers who are benefiting from the Cadillac Health Plan and don't want this to pass?
Again, we negotiate a contract. I mean, how the LEA feels, what plans they accept, what plans they don't, that's up to them. We just try to present and negotiate a fair contract with them, and then we try to present a fair contract to the public that they can afford, and that's we try to come together.
Yeah, I'm just reflecting back on this year's election, right? And I know for a fact that we have teachers, educators living in this town, right, that although liked the idea of the new plan, it actually didn't benefit them personally, right? And because of the increase in healthcare costs, they voted that article down. Right, wrong, or indifferent, that's the reality, right? So I'm just trying to think, how are we bridging that gap? I realize you're doing
I think
everything
the biggest
you
way
can.
is to try to educate them. I mean, I
Yeah.
think some teachers, are very fearful as far as changing, from one type of insurance to another type of insurance. And I think they're looking at worst case scenario, like what, potentially could cost them.
Mhm.
But between the deductible and the insurance company paying for part of the deductible, and in the worst case scenario, I mean, for the most part, most of them probably would end up breaking even, if not a little bit ahead of the game.
Look, I think any step towards getting into a more
Mhm.
realistic plan is a good step for the town, and I'm supportive of that. Just trying to. do what
No, I
can to
realize
see
that
that it
it-
passes.
Well, and that's the whole thing with the LEA negotiating team, that's what they have to sell to their membership, that, it's change. And like anything else in public business and private business, change is not always easy to accept.
I think I read at this point, what is it, 86% of schools have moved to this yellow plan. So if teachers decide that they want to leave the district in search of a better plan, their options are becoming decreasing.
This green yellow concept, that term is new to me, so I got to look that up. But
It's what, deductible versus pretty much a no
The green is a
deductible.
non-deductible plan.
Yep.
And to go to a deductible, that's when you go, they do it in colors for some reason.
what's
So
red? Is there?
Red is right now also, we have red and green, but
Okay.
I think red is it single?
EOS.
Right.
Green is an HMO.
Okay.
So, and I appreciate, like you said, the concern. I mean, my family didn't have a choice when we were forced into the change, and I had the same concerns. And it turns out budgeting and concern, like our family actually saves money through the plan.
Yeah.
So, and it is the fearful. I have two small boys. What if one of them gets hurt? What if this and what if that? But reality is they're not going to end up in the ER every year. So, over the, and there are HSAs, currently, I mean, they're still small. So, but I didn't have a choice, right? It was that or find a new employer.
The thing is, by going to a deductible plan too, and there are a lot of businesses that approved it, that once you do go to that type of plan, that people are a little bit more conscientious of what they're doing. They're not going to the doctor for every time they cough. They don't go to the doctor every time they have a headache.
Right.
And it cuts down on visits.
Wait
So it cuts
times.
down on expenses. And then next thing you know, the pool that you're in, because you're in with more than one school as far as, it's like an umbrella insurance plan. And there's a group. And then the cost is spread out.
Right.
Not to say that there aren't going to be some, catastrophic incidents, because it's going to happen in life, but you just start educating the people to be a little bit more conscientious as far as costs for insurance.
Right.
As I'm sure everyone sitting here is aware of costs for insurance.
So, so I believe that the biggest concern that the budget committee, the previous budget committee had was the long-term cost implications and liabilities, and it sounds like those are things that are being discussed in the negotiating team. So, I guess we have to wait and see what the devil's in the details, right? So what it looks like, what those increases look like, what the splits actually look like. But it sounds like we're moving in the right direction, so I hope.
More to come.
More to
And your
come.
goal is to get everybody in the school district under the plan. Is that correct?
Yeah,
So you have the teachers, and then you have the staff, the support staffs, and then you have the
It's a
SAU.
separate negotiating.
Yeah, I know, but it's your goal to get everybody into this same.
The
The same
attempt, the attempt was with the support system, but they didn't want to go to the other, and that's what talks about.
Yep. And so, but your goal is to get them and then get the SAU and everybody else under the same plan.
Correct.
Okay. Very good.
Support staff, that hasn't come up yet, right?
No, to talk about down, so we'll discuss it until again next year.
Next year.
All right, so are there any other comments, concerns, questions regarding the school? Okay, so member input, new business, just a reminder that our next meeting, June 27th, we'll have the NHMA training here. Again, the invitation's been extended to both the school board and to the Board of Selectmen and anybody in between. It's an open meeting. Please feel free to come. I mean, it'll focus on budget committee and those kind of issues, but it's definitely valuable information for anybody involved.
So in terms of regular agenda, town school updates, is that being tabled to July? Is that when,
Well,
August is the next meeting?
why don't we,
August.
August would be the next meeting. So I would think likely unless something comes up that
I'm
needs to
fine,
be
I'm just
discussed.
asking, yeah.
And that way we can just give them the entire opportunity to discuss unless something comes up on the school or the town that we need to discuss afterwards.
Okay.
So I guess we'll be in touch about if anything needs to be on the agenda. So otherwise, I would expect that, yes, we should table any discussions until the
Just in
August
the
meeting.
interim, while we're on point, then I really, by the June meeting, right, I'd like to, you would have a clear picture as to what the true budget is, right, and the unencumbered funds and where the priorities are going to be. I would suspect by then you'd have
By June what?
June 27th, by the next budget committee meeting,
I don't know when the next meeting is.
June 27th.
So would
Right?
you,
So I'd like an
Well, it's
update,
pretty close.
so we can have an
We
update.
won't have final numbers.
I'll be a little bit clearer. A little bit clearer.
even if it's just another business administrator's report, similar to what you've done, right?
So we can take a few minutes after the presentation and discussion there to discuss that. Because it's gonna be, you're gonna be closing out your fiscal year just a few days later, so the opportunity
I think it's a good
to
thing.
weigh in.
Right.
Absolutely. All right, then the analysis of the school budget. Everybody got it this time, right? So I don't think I got a confirmation from you, but I'm pretty sure it went through. So, did anybody have any questions or comments? Corey, did you have an opportunity to respond to any, or whether or not you had any comments and reactions to some of the questions?
At this point.
Okay. I mean, I think I highlighted some areas that we can look at further during the actual budget
Yeah, I mean,
development.
look, we can get into it. We don't need to get into it. It's truly the will of the committee, right? I mean, my intention for doing so is so the committee is aware of where I'm coming from for this year's budget cycle. I think you're starting to get a flavor for that, right? Between the town, or we'll stick with the school because we're on point with school, right? On the school side, I feel that next year's budget is $1 million inflated, right? I'm saying that based upon fact, right? That's not my opinion on whether there are certain areas where you can, take a harder look at how we're spending our cash. This is truly where I believe we're budgeting more than truly what the district needs,
They're saying the budget that we have already passed for next year is $1 million plus inflated.
in my opinion.
So when the budget's done, what I like you to do is take every line, go line by line. I want you to come up with over $1 million and say, this is where we're over $1 million.
Why do I need to do that? It's already in the budget.
Because you're telling the public that you just put a budget that was approved by the budget committee. That's $1 million over budget.
Brian, I'm not getting defensive with you,
Okay.
right?
Well, I'm just saying, if you think it's $1 million at the end of the
I
year.
also think the town's 300,000 to 500,000 over budget. Right? When you fund 61, this is a fact, there's 61 vacant positions in that budget. Right? There is $1 million increase just at GMS in 2 years. Right? Those are big numbers to swallow. They are.
And next year, when we present the following budget, then we can discuss as far as increases at GMS, and we'll explain those increases for you.
Sure.
So you'll have a better understanding.
Sure. So if you look at those numbers, right, of course, most of it's attributed to salary and benefits, as we would anticipate, right? That's the,
Mhm.
80% of the budget now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's fine. Then we're talking also about step increases and COLA increases and all that. And, I'm having a hard time balancing new contracts with step and COLA versus what I'm actually seeing in the numbers, which is, well, our salaries and benefits are going way up too.
Well, that's all
So-
part of salaries and benefits.
Is that $1 million for one building, for the teachers in one building? Seems a lot.
I
You know.
think,
Yeah,
I tend to
I
think-
guarantee you, the 61, you can say that they're listed as vacant, they're not vacant.
Okay, well, I'm going off the budget,
So-
right, and what it was
But
listed.
ultimately, what it indicates is that there's going to be areas where there's going to be tighter scrutiny. And then we have an idea of where at least Andrew's coming from. I also felt that the budget was high. I was on record saying I thought the proposed budget should have been lower than the default budget. That doesn't mean I necessarily agree it's $1 million, but I'm not disagreeing that it's higher than I believe it should have been.
If I could ask you, would you say a payroll number was at GMS?
I have to pull it up.
Well, I thought you just said it was a million over.
In a 2-year span.
Increase. I mean, I find it helpful to see where you're coming from, and I appreciate the amount of work that went into it as well.
Where are they getting this from?
I don't,
I'm sorry, I misspoke. It's up $1 million in 6 years, 500,000 increase in a 2-year period. The 500,000 increase is specifically from years 2017 and 2018, which is interestingly enough prior to kindergarten. And just in point of comparison, GMS is up $1 million in 6 years. We have LMS that's up 300,000 in the same period, CHS that's up 400,000 in the same period, and the SAU that's up 100,000. So when I'm looking at the district in total, right, it's disproportionately on GMS, and it seemed off to me.
And I think it's invaluable to have that input because face it, we're going to have those discussions come budget season. At least now you at least can prepare for it. You have an idea of what kind of questions are probably going to be coming. So we may as well start the discussion now. So hopefully it's not as.
And I'm certain when we present our budget for next year that GMS, it'll be very clear to you like where those monies have gone.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I mean, automatically, there are 2 additional teachers right now, full-time kindergarten teachers in there that weren't there
Yeah.
in those previous years. So right there, you're talking like $200,000 probably just
And benefits,
benefits and salaries.
But those were actually offset by reductions at LMS. So that could be why you were. So.
Anyway, on the point that, going line by line, I don't have a problem doing that.
But if you go line by line and come up with $1 million plus, I'd be really interested.
But we can do that. We used to do that. I don't think too many people here would be happy to do that because we've gone to the more streamlined.
Well, I can do the analysis, happy to, and then we can do voting at account, function,
Well, what
location
that
level. I don't care.
And what that would mean is that at next year's year end, either we encumber $1 million and spend it, or end up going back to the public, because you're going to see where it comes and goes.
And I hope that's money returned to the taxpayer, right? And that's the intention, right? And then generally from an over budgeting perspective, I'm not trying to zero anybody's budgets. The returns used in past years were, I was trying to cripple the district. That's not my intention at all. Let me go in public and saying that.
Yeah.
My intention is just to look for areas of overspend. And if the overspend matches, right, priorities and district objectives, great. There's a reason for it. Let's talk about it.
I agree.
Any other comments, questions, concerns regarding the school budget analysis? All right. Any other public input that would like to be discussed? We've covered pretty much everything I had. So if there's a motion.
are we going to talk about the
Capital planning.
Ah, yes. You know what? I wrote it up here and not down here. Excellent. Good. Thank you. Good catch. So the capital planning committee, it is a committee that was held previously. It had expired as noted. The membership was listed. I think the current membership is proposed to have a budget committee representative.
Mhm.
Traditionally, we have not sent a representative to these.
Before we get
That's
into
not
it,
true.
I'd like to hear
I was
kind
at
of
the
the
community.
objective of the committee, if we can.
All right. Would you guys like to speak to what the purpose and the proposal of this committee is that that is being resurrected?
What's that?
I have it right here if you'd like to see it.
I don't
There
know.
was no
It's gonna be.
attachment.
I can tell you from discussions we had from the first committee and then conversations we've had afterwards, I think really one of the focuses for this committee is going to be make a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan. Where's the district going to go forward with its buildings? I think that's the number one thing. I know we talked about it the last time when we were together as capital planning. Do we take all the monies that they're saying we should take and put into the buildings? And we decided, no, we trimmed down, I don't know how many millions of dollars. and Carrie, it came out of your mouth that what we should do is just put this all on a warrant and just do the entire thing and just get it done. And we had discussions about that. Is that the right thing to do? Is it not the right thing to do? And I think, again, I think we need to develop a good 3 to 5 year plan, what we're going to do with our buildings, but then also decide, and within that, maybe we'll decide, okay, we're going to repair this, we're going to repair this. And maybe we'll just come to the conclusion that what we need to do is replace this. That's a possibility.
It could be a possibility.
And you know that because you were involved with it. And you said a moment ago, the budget committee normally is not on these committees. You actually were on this committee.
As a member, community member, not as a member of the budget committee.
But the reason we wanted someone from the budget committee was another set of ears and to have some input. And you don't have to vote on financial parts of it, but just to give suggestions and some input. And even some input of like, I don't think the budget committee would go for something like this. That maybe we can do it this way.
What's the commitment? What's, do we know?
I think we met like every quarter is what it was initially set up
Yeah.
as.
I think at this point, in my conversation with the superintendent, is to really, set up monthly meetings and kind of full steam ahead on this thing, because we really need something solid. The buildings aren't getting any younger. The maintenance isn't, we're not able to catch up with everything that needs to be done, so we really need to get this moving. So I'd say it'd probably be a monthly meeting.
And probably for the first 6 months to a year, I would think that would be the case. And then after that, I think it would be much less.
Yep. I think one of the reasons the the committee before decided to encourage the idea of a one and done kind of thing is because the big issues were mechanical and electrical, and it doesn't make sense to stagger it out over 5 years when it's a majority of it is you get it. You're going to pick a part of this building and then come back another year later and do a part of the same building somewhere else. And then it's the economy of scale and the ability to leverage the contracts and the scheduling of the contractors made sense really to try to just get it done.
Well, I think we came to the conclusion that there were so many small pieces when it came to each one of those categories that rather than like sub this out, do this little job, being brought up all together, there'd be a considerable savings.
Surprisingly, we'll have to agree to disagree. So, so the discussion ultimately tonight is to think about, when do you plan to start this?
So
Soon.
as soon as we get the members collected.
Is to the take of the budget committee as to whether or not they feel that we should have a representative. Because in the past, the concern was, how do you know you're actually representing the interest or the opinion of the budget committee? Because we're not going to have the opportunity to vote as a committee and then bring the committee's voice to the subcommittee or subcommittee. So people didn't feel comfortable having a budget committee voice when they weren't sure necessarily what that voice would really be saying. So that's why they resorted to community members if they chose to involve that way.
Right? And, I'm just thinking out loud here, right? If a budget committee member were to serve, would they abstain from any votes on the budget committee should a proposal come through for our vote? Would they have to submit that? Because that'd be a pretty important vote to have that then we're saying you need to abstain on.
I don't know that you'd have to abstain. It's no different than like advocating for a fire station or something else. My concern is if say you're attending their committee meeting and you have to take one of their votes, how do you even know that that's how the budget committee would have voted? Like here, the reps have to vote the will of their respective boards. We would not necessarily have the ability to vote as a board on each individual item and then have that vote carried forward.
I thought that was a conversation we had, and Michelle can dig up the notes, but I thought we had that arrangement that you would abstain from voting on anything that was financial that would have an impact because, again, you're not speaking as for the whole budget committee. You're there more or less to represent the budget committee, but also just to bring the information back to them.
Right, but in terms of when it comes to the budget committee itself and the voting, like say if you come to the budget committee looking for 20 million for a new school,
Okay.
right? What happens with my vote on the budget committee, right? do I get to vote or do I abstain on that vote? Because I also served on that committee.
I would think you'd be able to vote on it.
Well, that's the question I'm asking.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, if it's,
because I'd want to vote on it, right? I mean, that's a big vote.
if it's for information purposes only, to have input back and forth,
Yeah.
you could also make the budget committee member ex officio, so they wouldn't have to vote. You wouldn't have to worry about that and have that concern on you.
Yeah.
But we would love to have budget committee representation.
I think it's a great idea, and I'm actually supportive of it if we can figure out the logistics of how to make it work.
So that was my concern. I'm not sure that I'm comfortable taking a vote on whether or not to actually have a person on the committee today. I think we need to discuss it and then figure out the implications and then vote.
So that would mean August. Is when-
Well, unless we put a small vote after the meeting next month. I don't know. Yeah, I would love to hear other people's inputs. I mean, initial thoughts, or you want to go home and digest it, that's fine too. But initial reactions.
I mean, the question I would have is the meeting, are these meetings going to be televised, recorded? Because if they are, then we could certainly observe what's going on at the meeting after the fact, or during the meeting. All of us can.
Yeah, they were not last time.
They were not.
No, I don't believe so.
They're very, I don't want to say informal, but they were not as formal as say this. So I mean, that's one.
I mean, per our bylaws, right, we don't talk and vote the same
That's
day.
why, right, exactly. So we can't even make a decision.
We wouldn't be able to make a decision today, but I also, time is of the essence, I wouldn't want to wait till August either.
Right.
So, another reason why I think we should have a small meeting after June.
Okay. So following the presentation, we will discuss.
You guys in your timing?
I think it all depends on how soon we can get the rest of the committee together, and we'll let you know. But again, I mean, the sooner we can do it, the better. I think we've put it off long enough.
As the school board decided, there was 2 reps from the school board, right?
Correct.
Or have you decided who the reps are for that?
I know that when this was first presented again, that I volunteered, and I don't recall if it was Tina or not. I think it was Tina. Because I was on the original one, so I figured I'd go on it again.
Welcome back.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's
So-
a little bit easier starting when some people have already been on it than
Sure.
starting
Yeah,
loving them.
Are they opening it to town? Because the previous one had community members. I don't see any community members requested on this list.
I think the thought process was that the people that are going to be on there are also community members. So rather than getting just someone else, that every single person is part of the community.
I appreciate that thought, but if you, regardless of your opinion on a new school, if you end up going that route, you want to make sure that you've been as inclusive in the discussion as possible. And I think if you want community buy-in, the best way to do that is to have the opportunity for people who aren't already engaged in other ways to be involved.
Well, I think if we were to present a new school, we would definitely get the community behind it.
Best way to do that is to have community members involved. That's all I'm saying.
And what I'm saying is every member that would be on that list is a community member.
Again, this is on the philosophical decision differences where
I think I think it's a good idea to get the plan. I mean, obviously, if more people are needed, you can always add
Correct.
additional people to the committee. But I think to get your I's dotted and T's crossed and at least some type of preliminary plan and then pull others in, I think is a fine approach.
I see no harm in including community members just because I seen what
I don't
happened
either, but
with.
it's the school's.
It is the school's decision, and I worry that they're shooting themselves in the foot by taking that stance. We saw what happened with the fire station. We had a team of community members who were all engaged, and then there was a huge uproar, and we had to redo it. So let's do it right the first time and make sure that everybody who would like to participate in being represented have an opportunity to do so. Because if you do end up with a new school, it's not a small investment and there's gonna be a lot of, very loud opinions on it. It's best to get out in front of it. That's my advice, my opinion. Clearly, I'm sure I know what you think of that, but that's all I'm saying. So it sounds like we will, you go home, think about it, discuss, so the question we need clarification then on is whether a budget committee member is required to be ex officio or if they can vote, right? That's the concern is, can they vote on the budget committee? So I think that would go back to you guys to clarify from your legal as to what that does to a budget committee member. Should they be serving on that board? Can they still vote in a budget committee member capacity?
I want to make sure that we maintain our objectivity.
Right.
Right.
Yep. So if we can get that clarification, that'd be awesome. Okay. Anything else? All right. Did I miss anything else? 'Cause I could have. It's been one of those weeks.
The only other item added to the agenda, Madam Chairman.
Excellent. So are there, back to public input? Any other chance? All right. Is there a motion? Entertain a motion to adjourn?
Madam Chairman, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All right.
Second.
Second. All right. It's been made and seconded. All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Probably not. Abstentions? Good. Thanks all. We'll see you June 22nd.